And then that's kind of perfectly led into the next question, exactly as you thought it would, because they are all very much tied in together, and exactly the way you put it, you have to be emotionally intelligent to communicate effectively anyway, which is what you touched upon. And if you didn't have any emotional intelligence, then that communication would falter immediately, you know, with any sort of relationship. So getting on to the next question, which is kind of how you could apply that. I would say, oh no, there's one more question before that actually, which I thought was really interesting, but I guess it might be along the same lines. But can you talk about the responsibility you have to reflect and shift approach or perspective when you're communicating with different level team members?
It goes back to what I mentioned before. I think it's a lot of these things probably have been answered or covered in one way, shape, or form. But specific down to sort of reflecting on my approach, my perspective, how to communicate with people, goes back to one of the things I mentioned before. People absorb information in different ways. People work in different ways. There are personalities to deal with. There's cultures to deal with. If you're dealing in a global company, you have cultures in different regions to deal with. And I know, working from the APAC region will be so different to the Americas region, so different to the European region. So and the the EMEA region, because of different backgrounds, different religions, beliefs, and everything else. So they bring that into work sometimes, and you have to be very aware of how you work with that. But that's okay. And I think, again, because of the amount of years and experience I've worked through programs globally, it's become more natural for me. But it really is important for other people to be aware of that through communications, and how people are communicated as well. So we get to a point where I mentioned earlier, some people are not very sort of open in a room full of 30 people, and they probably wouldn't say much. Some people will only say things because there are 30 people around to say about. So my views and how I work with this is, obviously, when I come into a program, is get to know everybody anyway, which is what I do. And I also then trying to work out very quickly, how do you want that information and what do you want as well? So, if we break down those channels again, like I mentioned before, there might be things like reports. Some people like structure, right? Some people like reports. So they want something a little bit more regular, but that's absolutely fine. Some people just want to say, you know what? I'm working on something at the moment, but I'll just dive into the portal and that repository and just leave the information in there. I'll go in, and you trust them to do it. And actually, 9 times out of 10, they do that. Okay. I think there's also the other areas to take into account, which I think I mentioned already, which is about, some people are very clever, but won't open up to to a group of people. That's okay too. We all have different ways of working. But you can extract so much goodness when you have one-to-ones with them, or if you work with them on an individual basis, because that's what they want as well. And I think then, as I said before, sort of working on a larger level, things like town halls and meetings, when you talk about the business, when the program starts to, you hear people within the program saying, but the business wants this and the business wants that. How do you tie the program to the strategic goals of the business? And that's really an important aspect. You remember, you're working with employees as well as contractors potentially here. These employees have objectives to meet on their day-to-day job. So they want to know how their contribution actually works into the wider scheme of things in terms of the business strategy. And actually, are they meeting their objectives by doing that? So it's so important for me, and I've done this many times, to bring the senior leadership team members to come and talk to the program team about how they see this program benefiting the business, how they see their roles benefiting the business, and what contribution are they adding as a result of implementing this particular program as well.